Ah.
Board games, board games. We might be talking about some sorts of board games, but we're not gonna shout. I'll talk about some things that I played with a friend yesterday, and we might talk a bit together about my currently running Kickstarter, and then we'll talk about a game from 2015, about a
Mm.
game that might finally be coming in 2023 from the company known as SSG.
SSG. Oh, nice rhyme there. Nice rhyme,
Hello,
Bez.
good
Yes, well
morning, good
done.
afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. It
Hello,
is,
everybody.
I believe, 10 a.m. ish UK time for Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. And we're going to have a bit of a catch up with Alan Paull. It's been more than 2 weeks. I mean, normally we chat every 2 weeks, but I think we skipped one for some reason. But yeah, I noticed that looking at the mechanisms, there's this brand new mechanism. What did you think of that?
It's quite specific, but I think it was auction compensation, which basically
Mm-mm.
does what it says on the tin. It was yeah. If you're in an auction game and you lose an auction, you get some form of compensation for losing, which is really. I mean, I can see why it's important. It's really specific. There was
I
only
mean,
about
there are
couple of
definitely
games.
more games that do this than just
Yeah,
Furnace, but it felt
yeah, yeah,
really strange that Furnace is the only. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to click that link. I meant to click the see all link,
yeah.
where Furnace and
It's the only one
an
mentioned.
expansion to Furnace are the only games. I mean, there are
Yeah,
other games where you get a
yeah, yeah.
second prize if, like, there's quite a few where it's like, hey, here,
Yes,
and
there
I
are. Yeah.
understand, but I feel like with a new mechanism, they should have at least, I don't know, 10 games to start it off because.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how they. I mean, it's impractical to go through all the games and see which ones might have it if it's a new category. Did it? Was that? Is it been a very? Do we
I
know
think it
when it
has
was put
just
in
been
there?
added.
Just been
And
added,
I feel
right?
like we
So it'll
should talk about
gradually
this
come.
for maybe like 30 seconds, just because we are, in
Yeah.
theory, going through all the mechanisms. And so this can be like, it's not enough for a whole episode. But hello,
No.
Kate. It is lovely to see you, and I hope you're
Hi.
generally well.
Hi.
And I think this kind of talks about the wiki nature um, of, yeah, Board Game
Hmm.
Geek, as
Hmm.
opposed to the editor edited nature of something like building blocks of tabletop game
Yeah.
mechanisms,
Hmm.
where it's someone who's saying, hey, this is what we're on about. And here it's like, hey, here's a brand new mechanism, and we're just going to do this together. Hello, Elaine. Lovely to see you. Good morning.
Hi. Hi. Yes. I
So,
mean, yeah. There's not a lot to say. I think the discussion in the book. Reminder, the book. Building blocks of tabletop game design is what we're looking at to an extent, which is where some of these mechanisms come from.
although I did decide early on to go through in alphabetical order on Board Game Geek,
Yeah,
which might be a
yeah.
slight mistake, but say.
It'll only take us 20 years, Bez. It's fine. Yeah, the discussion in the book actually does say that its main use is for auction mechanisms where everybody pays, or where you might get odd outcomes and particularly unbalanced outcomes of auctions. If, for example, if you've got an auction game where one player consistently loses the auction, then that's a really unsatisfactory game situation for that person. So having some form of compensation
But
is
normally,
a
if
good thing.
it's about whether you pay or not, because if you don't pay, if second, third, fourth, so forth do not pay, then the fact that they do not pay is itself compensation.
It is
That and
compensation, yes.
so I think that yeah, I mean Elaine says 100% correctly. BGG, of course, it builds up things over time, and it
Yeah.
definitely can't have started with all the categories it has now. But I think that yeah, it does make me wonder. I mean, right now, anyone can do anything to edit anything, and it's down to that individual moderator, it's down to the individual users, whether it gets accepted or not. And it does make me think about the benefits of having someone who's kind of a bit more in charge of it. But yeah, if
It's
we want
hard
to
to
talk about
curate.
this very, very briefly, I would say if people need to pay, yeah, consider compensation. And I don't think we'll chat more about it next time we meet, I guess.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we were going to chat about stuff that we'd been up to recently.
Yeah.
So let's
why
do
not?
that. Let's chat about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. I played 3 games, and also I have photos of birds. I want to go through all 4 of these things. Shall I start and
Okay.
we'll go back and forth? Is that a decent
Yeah,
way to do
sure.
it?
Do that. Yeah.
Okay, let me start with a game by Knizia, Through the Desert. Have you played this, Alan?
Oh, yeah. I have a long time ago. Yeah. Oh, don't they look like little sweets that you could just eat? They're a bit like
100%.
camel
I mean,
jelly
like, they
babies.
look like
That's a wrong thought.
lavender, vanilla, pistachio,
Yeah.
blueberry,
Yes.
strawberry.
Yes, I have to. It's a very clever game. That it when you I think when you start that game, you think, this feels a bit nice and fluffy, and then you suddenly realize all those decisions you have to make are so critical. But what a lovely game! It's definitely an old game, but I think it stands the test of time to an extent. Although to be fair, we haven't played it for a while. Oh, right.
The one I've got
You have got
here
a
is the
German copy.
1998 version. I'll show you this box a bit more carefully, but just to let people know what's going on here, it is a perfect information game. So once the game starts, there is no randomness except for the chaos of the other players, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I played it 2-player. You do not control the camels, you control the little riders. So I've got my group of vanilla, and Orange has their group of vanilla, which is much bigger. I've got my nice group of green, Orange has their group of green, and you can see there's one space between them, so the caravans are never allowed to merge. So there's a little bit of thinking, if I move my blue here, that I can't get the 3, but that means that Bez can't get the 3 either, which takes away 3 points from Bez, which is a great move. Congratulations, Orange. And you are trying to carve out areas like that you can use the edge of the boards, which some people say this feels like multiplayer Go. I think that's the extent of it. I don't think there's a lot of similarity at all. I think that also this kind of almost feels like a Knizian point salad, because you're getting points for going to specific spaces, you're getting points for touching the palm trees, and you're getting points for making areas. And whilst that's not a lot of ways to make points, compared to the normal Knizian singular vision of design, I think it is quite almost sprawling in possibilities.
For Knizia, it's sprawling. I know. I have enjoyed that game a lot. I think we've got an earlier edition than that one. Just that looks slightly different from what we've got. But yes, I confess I can't really remember. I do remember thinking, this is a really neat design. It's quite tight. Like all Knizia designs, you do have to be very careful everything you do, and there can be unexpected twists. You can have a long-term plan, and there can be unexpected twists that will that the players can use to bite you at the end. But yeah, it's lovely. It's a lovely game.
I would definitely like to play this at least twice more. I mean, I do need. It is going to be on the list of things that I get rid of when I go to Thailand. To be honest, I can only pick like a very small number. But yeah.
Well, next time you come over, we could have a game. Yeah, good.
I just want to show this little old thing from the 90s, which was from Cosmos Verlag. Very 90s.
Very, very 90s. Yes. Lovely.
So, what's one of your highlights?
Okay, we have played Woodcraft again. We played 4-player Woodcraft on Monday with Tonks and Tigs over in Witchford near Ely. So Woodcraft is one of the newest ones, came out at Essen, and we got a copy, and I think that's our third. I think that's our third game. We played it once before, 4-player with
Yeah, I saw you playing this at
which
KCON, I believe.
sorry.
I think I saw you playing this at KCON.
Oh, that's right. We did. Yes, we did. But we played it. So yeah, that's three. I think that's 3 full games. We last time we played it in Witchford, we didn't allow enough time. We arrived a bit late, and and it was a teaching game as well, so we didn't actually finish. This time we finished. It took us, I think it took us a couple of hours for a 4-player, maybe slightly more. It's got a lot of things going on, and we're still getting to grips with how to make the best of it. To be honest, it's so. I mean, there's quite a big learning curve. The theme is not. I like the theme, which is basically the dice represent lumber, and the whole game is how you manipulate those dice in order to, quotes, make things out of wood, i.e. fulfill order cards. You can see the order cards in the middle there. And when you fulfill order cards, you get some reward for doing that. And it also goes to a pile of order cards. And during the game, you acquire prestige, which is a multiplier against the number of orders that you've fulfilled. And that's a main way of getting points. But it is a bit of a point-salary game. There are ways of getting points all the way through the game. But the central part of the mechanism for actions is that wheel top left there. You pick one of 7 actions, and when you pick the action, you move the tile to the next quadrant. Sorry, no sound, Bez.
It's kind of like you're not building, but contributing to this communal rondel that keeps shifting and evolving over time. But
that's
it's
right.
not that it necessarily moves in one direction, but it's just ebbs and flows that you need to take advantage of. Is that right?
Yes, because you get, depending on where the action tile is, you will get more or less bonuses when you take that particular action. That you do the full action, but at the edge of the rondel and also in the middle of the rondel, there are bonus cubes and other things that you can actually acquire. So the game bribes you to take actions that other people haven't taken for a while. So there is that bribe. So you the problem from the player decision point of view is, do I take that really juicy action which has got lots of bonuses on it, even if it's not really the action I want to do?
And I think this is a really nice technique, like as a design technique, because whether it's through the process of auctions or adding other benefits or paying money to bypass things in a long row, however you can make sure that even the things that are seen as rubbish, eventually there will be more and more and more benefits accrued onto them until eventually that's the decision point. At what point do I want to take it, partially to get the benefits, partially to stop you getting everything?
Yes, exactly. Do I break my overall strategy in order to deprive you of some bonuses, and I get those bonuses instead? Is the major decision. It's a very nicely executed game. I would say it's I wouldn't say it's particularly original. It's dice manipulation. It's action selection from 7 actions, but it's put together really nicely. I think people who like complex Euro games with very little luck will go for that. It really, I was describing it as it's got quite a lot of technical stuff that you need to get your head around.
So Woodcraft,
so it will appear. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it will appeal to people who like the technical side. And so I'll probably never get really good at it, because I'm not very good at thinking 4 moves ahead and working out whether that's going to be good for me in the light of what other people might be doing in those 4 turns. But Woodcraft, that's a good one.
I got to play Tranquility, which I'd played a couple of times before with Peter Hazelwood on Board Game Arena. But my friend yesterday who was visiting, the plan is that, I would need a bit more routine. I'd like to have people coming over and they have the opportunity to come over. And so it was like, okay, let's make a weekly date. And so we're going to meet up. And so this is why I've played quite a few games yesterday. And so we played my friend's copy of Tranquility. Have you played this one?
I have not played that, no.
So it's supremely simple. Don't be deceived by the fact that this is a square. Essentially, this is one very long line. And it's a very long line with 36 spaces on which you need to place cards. Each player places them one at a time, going in ascending order. So at the bottom, you need to have the lowest thing, and then it keeps going up. So it's not like Lucky Numbers, which is an actual two-dimensional grid. This is purely one-dimensional. It's only there as a square so that it doesn't, so that it fits on the table, basically.
Right, yeah.
Now, of course, that would be fairly easy. You're allowed to place a card wherever you want, but you will have to discard some cards during the course of the game, which is where it gets tricky. And the cards that you discard are not allowed to be seen by the other player. If you place a card adjacent to something else, you need to discard cards equal to the difference. So if you've got a 74 and a 75, you must discard one. If you've got a 74 and a 76, you discard two. And if you're discarding more than two, then that can be pretty painful. And there's some strategy in trying to play on all the odd spaces first so that you play adjacent as infrequently as possible, if you see what I mean. And then by that time, you've probably got an idea of what's been played, what we need. And the other twist is that at some point in the game, you will need to play a start card. When this has been played, you will need to discard 8 cards between the two of you. I think there's slightly different rules for different player counts, but 2 players, you need to discard 8 cards. And normally you've got a hand of 5. At that point, you draw up a couple of extra. And so if your entire hand was stuff that you wanted, that's going to be super painful. So you almost need to keep some cards in your hand up until that point to say, okay, these cards I can definitely get rid of. And then there's a whole bunch of optional modules to make it even harder. Like there's some monsters, and monsters, you have to play them before the game ends, and monsters discard something from the middle. And that's obviously been seen by both players, but it's the hidden discarding, which is really at the beating heart of this game, and thinking, well, I can make good mathematical analysis, but I'm trusting you to do the same. And there was a tiny thing like my friends said, oh yeah, that finish card, this is the final thing I've not mentioned. You need to play the finish card last once the entire grid is filled. Well, there's 5. And so I always think I'm going to discard 2. And if the other person discards 2, we'll definitely have 1 left at some point. I said, oh yeah, that is actually quite clever. I didn't think of that.
Is this co-op game?
It's cooperative.
Co-op. Yeah. Thought so. Yeah, I love that idea that it's the discards, the hard thing is the discards. I like that, and that does work in solo and co-op games really, really nicely. Presumably you can't get them back.
Co-op, it brings in a lot more hidden information of what did the other person do. But then by the time that you've built up this language and you're both on the same level, so to speak, to say, this is what we're going to do, this makes sense, I'm not sure. Like, it's a fine game. I don't feel the need to play it over and over. I enjoyed it, and it was very pleasant, and the art is beautiful. Don't get me wrong.
It does look lovely. I think that the discards and the fact that you can't look at the discards is great as a way of stopping that communication. That's
very
just
elegant.
Such a neat idea. Very elegant. Yeah, that looks lovely. Oh wow, yeah. You don't quite get the flavor of that, but I can. How big are they?
They are basically this big.
Yeah. Oh right, lovely, great.
So
I do like that. Well, I have to getting a copy of that.
Tranquility. It's a very, I would say it's not an exciting game. It's not a riveting game. It's a pleasant game. It's a game to kind of make your way through. And the name actually does it service. Tranquility. Yeah.
Definitely want to look at.
Alan, did you want to talk about what you recently played?
Well, in terms of recent highlights, I I was on another live show yesterday
Oh,
with the Restless Kaiser. It's a war game. It's a war game show. I mean, it's called Modeling for Advantage, although really it's about wargaming, not really modeling.
was that to do with Kingmaker?
Not this time. No, I was on a show with them back in September about Kingmaker, but they invited me back to talk about game design. I think largely because of the shows we've been doing here, Bez, actually, which was nice. I think Restless Kaiser has either been in contact with you or has at least seen some of your shows. May not have been in contact with you yet, but may do.
I've not been in contact with me. I guess I'm not wargaming enough.
No, I think that it's a very focused wargaming type show, and
Yeah,
it's
I mean, as you
it's quite rambly.
The fact that it's called the Kaiser.
Well, he is the Kaiser is a teacher, so he wants to make sure that he never uses his name, so he's keeping out of the way of potential flack from his own students. But yeah, it is a very mainstream war gamesy type show, and we were talking about war games. We were talked about Airfix battles and about Mission Command Normandy, but it's not as focused on the technicalities of design as we are. It was a bit more chatty, I think, no, I enjoyed it. It was good, and we'll probably do another one. We'll probably do another one in the new year, but I think looking a bit more at some of the war game design aspects. But yeah, that was quite fun. And yeah, and it's available on YouTube if people would like to have a look at that. So that was good. And while I'm talking wargaming, my book of the fortnight is this thing. This is very nerdy. Just getting the nerdy thing out of the way. This is a book called the Tigerfieber. It was this is extraordinarily nerdy. This came out during World War II as it is a primer for Tiger tank crews. So Tigerfieber is Tiger primer, and it's aimed at platoon leaders and Tiger crews, teaching you how to run a Tiger. And the interesting thing about that, you can quite see it. It has a very kind of cartoony, chatty style, but it's all the technicalities of how you operate a Tiger tank. Now, the reason I've got this is actually an English translation that was produced in a nice big box, excuse me, by the Tank Museum. So it's for tank nerds, really. And that's what I bought. It was kickstarted actually some while ago, and it suddenly turned up 10 days or so ago here, because I bought it a long time ago. So I think it probably took 2 or 3 years to appear. But it's for tank nerds. It's quite an interesting book because it addresses learning how to run a tank in a very chatty, cartoony way. So it's got really solid information in it, but delivered in a really interesting, popular style. And apparently it's incredibly popular with tank crews as well. So that is the Tigerfieber.
And I just want to say that firstly, that's the stream that Alan's talking about over there, linked in the chat. And also, I just noticed that I missed a heck of a lot of chat. So I do apologize. And I would like to acknowledge at least some of it. So, oh no, I made my screen go the wrong way. There we go. So, yes, booking plans. I mean, I guess plan making is kind of a highlight, but I don't count plan making as a highlight until those plans have been executed. Tom's got an amazing story about Through the Desert, which is apparently the game that got them started in hobby gaming. And hello, Tom. It's
Oh,
good
right.
to see you, Tom Cauldron. And found it in a charity shop, German language version, durch die Wurste, same as what I've got over here. And had no idea what it was about,
Oh.
but someone had written on the cover, like someone had scrawled on it, what's going on? But then, years later, Tom discovered that it was Reiner Knizia's signature.
That's a nice discovery. Yeah. Hi, Tom. Hi. Good to see you.
And also, Tom wants to say Carcassonne and Catan were games that they had played before, but this was the first game through the deserts that astonished them with the possibilities of what they could possibly be. And talking about the kind of point salad-iness of that game, Elaine says it's fine as long as there's multiple ways to win as well as multiple ways to get points. They annoy me when it emerges that there's one definite strategy to win by following one of the points paths. Yes, it absolutely makes sense. Yes. And yes, I think it is important that all of the things are important and meaningful. If you've got something that's not important to consider in the game, I would say it shouldn't be in the game.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Woodcraft hasn't got a single strategy. It doesn't look like it has. I'm really hoping that that it hasn't. I think in Woodcraft, fulfilling orders is really important because that seems to be a major way of getting points. But I think it's one of those games where you're probably going to do two major strands of getting points, but there are several different strands you can do it with. I have a suspicion that one of those major strands will have to be orders, and definitely the game. You get 4 orders in your hand in that game, and you will play each 4 of those.
But sometimes it's fine if there's several paths, and one of them is just kind of an opportunistic. Well, if all else is going to be equal, I'm going to do this because of that path that I'm normally ignoring, but that's still something that I sometimes think about. There is some love for tranquility on Board Game Arena. States is concerned about the real-life fiddliness. Tom says, we enjoyed it. A bit stressful. Xate says, monsters are very helpful, but the jagged rocks add some stress. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think I can see the potential benefits. Xate says, start teaching people free monsters and go up to the full 5 from game 2 on.
Okay. All right.
Well, I would honestly just start with the basic thing but I'm someone who likes a bit of simplicity and likes to add in things slowly. And we've got some chats about Board Game Arena confusion, and hopefully Elaine and Xate can have some lovely games on Board Game Arena. That is, Xate says, when it's teaching, you need monsters to get rid of very badly placed cards. But that, I guess, assumes that one person is teaching and the other person is learning. Whereas I guess if both people are learning together, then you don't know how to use the monsters. So maybe add in a few monsters from game 2. I don't know. It's up to you. Other people decide. Yeah,
teaching.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about from my own stuff is I did play one other game, which is a game that I got given at in Harrogate, Aircon, and this is called Lunar Base. As you can change my screen, you can see it's a teeny tiny game. It's very shiny, and it's got like a magnetic thing.
Yes, we also have a copy of that. Yes, we also have a copy. It's I think we may have played it once. I can't remember. I know we were shown how to play it at Aircon. Sorry, I interrupted you, Bez. Yeah.
No. So this was possibly the same person who gave me a copy also gave you this copy because they were very keen to promote it. And truth be told, I hadn't opened it for quite a while. And then it was, okay, I really need to get to this. I really need to start playing for all this stuff. And it has this really nice resource system, which I was kind of already, I feel slightly uncomfortable because it was something that I was thinking about using in a hypothetical future game where you put cards and it's all about can this card and this card link up
Yes.
correctly, in which case they make a resource. So on the bottom left there, you'll see just above where it says dark side, there's half a red
Yes.
circle, and that matches to another half a red circle, which makes a whole red circle, which gives me one red resource. And what
Yes.
that means is when I make future red cards, I can spend 1 credit less if it needs 1 red resource. So a card like that spaceship, it needs 5 red resources, which is quite a lot. But if you don't have all of them, you can use your credits. Credits are essentially wild. Credits allow you to pay for anything. You're building up your tableau, you're building up this thing. You've also got some agent cards, which allow you to get these one-off effects to mess with your opponent or get nice things for yourself, and eventually win either by having 20 credits, which
Yes, that's
you
right.
get by having generally either having yellow resources when you're about to repopulate the market, or you want 10 people, which are sometimes printed on the card. So on the bottom, you can see that I've got 3 bluish people, or you've got 5 distinct scientific achievements, which
Yes,
are the
that's
little red icons, which aren't the circles. And I found, so you've played it. What did you think of it?
I thought it was quite a nice idea. Having the 3 different victory conditions makes it quite an interesting one, because you're balancing out the opportunities you get against those 3 strands, and you're having to keep an eye on what your opponent's doing in each of those 3 strands, which I thought was quite an interesting idea. But I think we only played it once or twice when we first got it, and we must get it out again. Actually, the thing is, it's one of those small games you can tuck it away on a shelf and forget about it, which is unfortunate, because it probably deserves a bit more play to find out more about it.
This
And
is
it is
something
very nicely implemented, and I like the cards. It looks good.
I would consider keeping this, which is a big kind of, that's lots of acclaim right now, partially because of the player count 2 to 6. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I am concerned about the high player counts because there's nothing to speed up, so there is going to be an increased amount of downtime when you've got more and more players, which I think I might personally kind of not enjoy so much. And there is an official variant where they say, okay, once someone's done 2 achievements rather than just 1 out of the things, then that can that might potentially allow it to have a more of a satisfactory ending, because I can definitely see that whilst I rocketed up to from 3 to 11, and then I was earning, like, I think if you look at the previous thing, I'm earning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm earning 10 points every time the middle gets repopulated, because I've got 2 cards, spaceships, which reward everyone for having the reds, which doesn't seem that great because it's not only me but also my opponents, but because it comes with so many potential red resources, that gave me a massive advantage. And once that was down, it was kind of inevitable that I would be able to cream my way to that victory. But then it doesn't necessarily give me a good, well, it does give me an advantage for other things, but not necessarily. So I don't know, maybe that was fine, maybe, but yeah, I'd like to try it at a higher player count, see how it goes. But I do have a slight concern over the claims that on the box that it's a 6-player game. That is one thing that.
I haven't played it with the high. I think we played it. I think Charlie and I played it because it's two to 6 on the box. Yes. I think Charlie and I played it, and I don't know why I think it's just because it's small. We haven't played it enough. We need to play it. We need to get it out again. It would go well with our Tuesday evening group, which is usually 4 of us, and we tend to play shorter games, and that would fit quite nicely, I think, with that group. So I think that's one to. I'll make another note here. We really ought to get that out again. And we're finding this a lot now. There are so many games that we've got which we don't play enough, but we need to go back and revisit some of these games. And it wasn't actually that long ago that we got
Yeah,
it.
your collection's getting fairly unwieldy, you might say.
It is a bit. Yes, you could say that. Yes.
No, I will be. Yeah, I'll be interested to hear what you think at that player count. I will. Yeah, definitely. Also, the nice thing is it is a fairly small box, so it's not as if you have to. And sometimes it's okay if there's a bit of downtime. All you really need is a game that can play with 6 players, because there's not that many strategic games that do play at that player count.
I mean, we often say like Tongiyaki, you might play with 6, but it says 2-6. It says 2-6 on the box of Tongiyaki, but really 6 is a bit of a stretch because it's so chaotic with 6. So 6-player games are quite difficult to come by. But I think maybe we'll take it with us to GridCon. We're going to GridCon in a week or so. Nice. We'll probably take it there. That might be quite fun.
Yeah, and as we've just said, like, it doesn't take much space in your suitcase or whatever.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Whether there's 2 of you or give it to go with 6. I'll be interested to hear. And I think in the middle, because the market is, I want to say, 3 plus 1 card for the number of players. So with 6, there would be 9 in the middle.
Yes.
So it does mean that if everyone is getting rid of 2 from the middle, whether that's drafting or whether that's getting rid of them for credits, which is they call it reselling. It doesn't feel thematically like reselling. It's just kind of getting rid of cards in the middle for credits. So
slight mismatch to theme. But just speaking of that, Woodcraft has got that slight mismatch with theme in that when you plant something in Woodcraft, you're actually planting lumber, not seeds, which is the only grating bit. I mean, the theme works otherwise fairly well, but no. I cut a piece of wood off my stock of wood and I plant it. Doesn't seem quite right. They do say it's a magical feature of the forest, and you think, yes, okay. I suspect they started with the idea that you had a seed mechanic in there, but it probably just was too complex because it's a whole additional thing. How do you get seeds and things? And they decided to fudge it, I think. So I think that's a criticism that you can have with that game. All the other things seem, yes, okay, you can slice things off, you can saw things, you can even splice wood onto another piece of wood, glue it together and what have you. That all works quite nicely. I think that goes with the theme. But you have these pots and you plant a piece of lumber into the pot and it magically grows. Seems a bit off. But I can see probably they couldn't quite make that.
Yeah, I think that if you look too carefully at any game, there's going to be some mismatches.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't think we can blame them, but it's just a choice of words there. And the only one thing I wanted to say is because the market is bigger, that does mean that, yes, with 6 players, you could probably, once it's halfway around the table, like 3 players before, you can start looking at the market and think that he'll probably get at least one of these cards, so it's actually worth you reading them. And so, anyway, we've talked ridiculous amounts about what we've been up to, although that was one of the main topics, what we've been up to.
Yeah.
So, the other things we wanted to talk about were my game that you're publishing. And is that a brilliant thing? Like, things taking a while, is that a brilliant thing? Or maybe things getting eventually done? I'm trying to spin this. Things being eventually done.
Things being eventually done could be a good, brilliant thing. Yes.
Like, you know what? Things taking time can be a brilliant thing, because even though it might be like, I could be here and be like, Alan, what's up with this? Like, you said you were interested in publishing it, and it's taken like 7 years. But, at the same time, it does mean that we've had time there have been minor changes. There's been I think it was Tony Boydell who made the point that, well, you've got 3 cards. and you say that this is a game worth playing 3 times, why not just say that you use these 3 cards for all
Yeah.
3
Yeah, yeah.
games? And that was a really nice slight change.
Would you like to show? Can we share? Actually, can we share the little
going-
couple of paragraphs? Because I've got it on
I
screen
was going to
here.
focus on
just-
why waiting for things is a brilliant thing first.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, go for that. Yeah. Yes.
So why? Yeah, basically, you get more time to ponder. You get more time to like.
Yeah.
If I come back and if I play it now, I'll almost be seeing it with fresh eyes because it's been so long since I last played it.
Yeah. It's going with the sticking the wood in the pot thing. It's about growing. It's about maturing things.
Giving things time
Sometimes,
to mature.
yeah, I
sometimes
like.
and patience. I think that's the key thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we're agreed with that. As always, comments, ask questions, public follow-ups. Yeah, let's talk about this game. Alan, do you have any graphics or anything you want to share?
Well, I do. I'd like to
Maybe
share
not the work in progress of the artist that we've just been sent, but
not that. But I think I'd like to share the couple of paragraphs on the theme, if I may.
okay.
I've got it in front of me. How do I do this? Do I do it with a present?
Yes.
If I do share screen,
Or share window would let you share a particular window.
How do I share window?
So while you're working that out,
here we go.
I will
I think I can do
explain that
this.
this is a game I entered into a redesign contest. I think this was a redesign contest that started in 2014. Because I think the first one was 2013.
I always lose track of which actual one this was. Was it the last one or the second to last one? Second to last
Mine
one.
was the second one. I think you had
Yes.
13, 14, and 15 launch dates, and
Right.
14, 15, 16 kind of wrap-up dates, sort of.
Right. Okay.
For the redesign contest.
This was UK Games Expo redesign competition, which was the brainchild of largely Cara at
Cara used to work for Leisure Games, yeah.
Leisure Games, yeah.
No longer.
No. But she was behind this. I think part of it was that they have occasionally at shops, they have a game which doesn't sell very well, so you have a few left over, if I can put it that way. And the idea was that they would invite designers to take the old game and make something new out of it using as many of the components as possible from the game. And the particular year for this one was we used Gnomes of Zavandor.
Can we talk about I mean, I feel like maybe the redesign contest is a discussion for a different day, but I would be really interested to talk about that. But just to say, it was judged by Cara, of course, yourself, and also Michael, who people might know as Idol Michael on Twitch, and designer of Holding On, also Baseball, the board game adaptation of the video game.
Yes, and for some reason, Bez thought that she would enter this competition, and we were really
do so well. The second year, I managed to actually get something done. I'll talk about it another day. That could be another story.
But the thing that the striking thing that we found was that Bez was the only person who used the sprue of the tiles in the design of her game. Michael and I both immediately thought, what a brilliant idea. That's a definite brilliant thing, using the sprue as part of your components. And this is a board which you move a piece around here. Well, but Bez, you ought to explain.
So the original title
conceit of the game, yes,
kind of tells you what you are doing. Originally, it was gnomes, and it was called "Hey Dog" or "Yo Dog." I heard you like moving gnomes, so move a gnome to move a gnome to move a gnome to maybe remove a tile.
Yes. And that was one of Bez's titles. It was one of Bez's titles, which just basically says what you do in the game.
So which was a little gnome on the, and this actually, I won't say the inspiration was largely when I was trying out things. I had a stock markets game which actually works reasonably well. I might make another stock market game one day. I've never released a stock market game, but should do one as a busy bargain bag. Anyway, back to the topic. I had one, and Ben Neumann said, this is fine, but it's not super exciting. What if you kind of try to make it a bit different? Like, because look at here, there's a little gnome, there's a giant figurine, like a cardboard standee of a gnome, and they've got a bit of paper. What's going on? Maybe this gnome is playing a game with the other gnomes. And so maybe and then that got me thinking, oh, that's interesting. Like a gnome playing with the other gnomes. What if you move a gnome to maybe move another gnome? And then maybe that moves another gnome. And so that's basically, it was like, okay, you wander around, and then maybe that's the direction that the second thing moves in. And then the second thing is going to move in that direction. And then what can this be? Like that's not enough. You don't want just 2 layers. That's not interesting enough. You want the first layer, and then it gets kind of ridiculous and funny. And so then the second, okay, well, you've got different cards with different numbers on them. Some of the cards had 2s or 3s. I was like, yeah, ignore the gem type. That's just the number. Oh, no, the gem type, that was the animal back then. Yes. And so it was like, okay, flip that over. The number of on the card determines how far the third one moves. And if the gem type here matches the gem type here, then they both get removed, and you're trying to keep your gem type in the game. And so it was completely abstract. There was not much of a theme except for the ridiculousness of its title. And it kind of wouldn't exist if it wasn't for those specific components being in the box, if you know what I mean. Kind of pushing me down a particular direction. And then do you want to talk about after it was presented, what your thoughts or whatever?
Yes, because I think originally you presented it as a 4-player game, and when we play tested it with we had a little playtest group for the competition. Matthew Dunstan and Brett Gilbert. We play tested, and we all thought this doesn't really work very well as a 4-player, but as a 2-player, it works just fabulously. It's quite nice, and it's quite abstract. But with 4, you just didn't have any control. With 2, it worked really nicely because you're trying to think each round. You're trying to think, I've got to move this first piece, and that triggers everything else. But I have to do that while I'm thinking what my opponent might be able to do in their turn, and I'm trying to think in an almost chess-like way how to manipulate I want to manipulate my opponent into doing something that I want to do, and that's really nice in that three-fold mechanism over a couple of turns. And it's sufficiently complex that you can't think ahead necessarily all the way. So it's not completely mechanistic because it becomes rapidly becomes too complex. But really,
what your group said about making it a 2-player game did very much. It was a learning lesson for me. I mean, I think that's I was just at that point, at least, feeling like everything needs to be stretched as far as possible. And nowadays, I come to things which say on the box up to 6 players, and I'm thinking, is it really good for 6 players?
Is it really? Yeah.
But so it's like,
and I think we did
the best game so that if people play it with any of the player counts on the box, and there was, so you gave me that advice, and then I wouldn't say I changed an awful lot about it. I just kind of thought more carefully about what numbers were in the grid. So it's basically fine-tuning those numbers, fine-tuning the size of the grid, thinking, because you said, okay, you've shown that you can use the components, now you can change the components if you want, which was very nice.
Yes. And I think that part of the original approach was that it felt to most of the designers that having more players is good. It makes it more useful. You can get more with more player counts. Theoretically, you get more of an audience. But actually, if it's a really good 2-player game, then focus on that and don't try to make it 3 or 4. In fact, I think we have played around with 3 or 4 player variants for that. But really, If
There
they're
are
not, if it's
variants,
not,
and I would like the variants. I mean, with your permission, to be a small thread on Board Game Geek.
we could. Well, we could include 3 or 4 player variants in the box, but I wouldn't want it to have. I wouldn't want to put. I would be reluctant to put 2 to 4 on the box.
Oh, definitely not.
It's,
I'm
no,
kind of
because
even feeling like it is. Yeah.
the
I feel like
point
the 3
point
and
here
4
is
is
it
just say, hey, if you enjoyed this
if
and
you
if you
really
want
want.
to try
Yes,
it with 3 or
yes,
4, here's a
yeah.
variant. And
I would
I
be.
guess
I
if
would
it's
be
just a page
concerned.
right at the back, then it could be,
Yeah.
oh, that's a bonus. If there's
Yes,
2
I would
blank
be concerned
pages.
if it's. I would be concerned if the 3 or 4 are not as good as the 2. In some senses, if the 3 and the 4 are sufficiently interesting and work sufficiently well, we might look at putting those as variants. I mean, I go back to what I did with March of Progress, which March of Progress is a 2-player game. It's not designed for any other player count, but we do have a little 3-player variant which I put in because I thought it might be interesting, and there were people who in the Kickstarter were saying, wouldn't it be interesting to have this kind of thing in? And I think it's like 3 extra cards. It wasn't a big problem. And it does work. It does work as a 3-player. I wasn't necessarily certain that it was as good as 3, so I definitely didn't put 2 or 3 on the box. It's definitely a 2-player game, and if you want to try it with this 3-player variant, it might be that's an interesting thing to do. But I wouldn't want it to detract from the fact that it really is a 2-player. So there's a kind of.
In a sense, it's nice to be able to take one box and without being egotistical, like, yeah, parts of it is due to ego, but I do carry an L deck with me wherever I go, because when I'm in the train, I know that there's games, solo games that I can play without even needing a table. I know that the L deck gives me games for every single player count, every single opportunity, but not every game needs to be so flexible. And I do feel like the 3 and 4 player variants are, it's definitely a variant. And I think that people who buy this game, they've probably already got another game, at least one other game for 3 or 4. And fundamentally, I would not want anyone to buy this game unless they were actually going to play it with 2 players. So
Yes,
I think
I agree.
that just focusing on that is probably the better move. And I'm kind of talking myself out of even mentioning it on Board Game Geek. Like, if someone really wants it, then we could make it say, well, if enough people ask, then maybe we'll spend a few extra days. Like, we could hang out together and work something out. But unless there's massive demand, I would rather people just appreciate it as a 2-player only game.
Yeah, that's certainly my approach. It's something we would probably have a thread on in the Kickstarter.
So we had, like, I think I had a lot of 3-4 player, and then the cards, I believe they got introduced after I came. I want to say I got 2nd place in the contest.
Yes. Yes. That, it was a bit strange in a way, in that we both Michael Fox and I said, yeah, we would be interested in publishing your game, Betsy's game. But there was a game which I can't even remember which game won the competition.
It was by Marcel Borowiecka. With
that's right. It was Marta's game. Of course it was. Oh, how silly! How could I forget? It was Marta's game. And Marta produced a larger game, which was a fun game with had a rotating central gnome. And
you were trying to escape the gaze of the gnomes.
That's right. Yes, and it was a fun game, and that was a worthy winner. That wasn't something that, in fact, we encouraged Marta to go with to get that published with another company, or try publishing it with another company, because we felt that it wasn't our type of thing. But that's a whole different story. The cards
thing where parts of it is just like even though like the quality of the game and whether it gets published or not has so much to do with luck and
Yes,
whether the
yes,
game is the right fit for the publisher
yes,
in terms of
yeah,
the
exactly.
components that it might
Yeah,
use,
yeah,
in terms of everything.
yeah. And for this one, um, the difficulty we had with this, I've been saying for a while we wanted to publish the game. The difficulty we had with this is that it's quite an abstract game, and it's very interesting and it's fun and it's a very, very good game. But what we wanted to do, we aren't a company really that publishes pure abstract games. So we were trying to find a theme that would work with the threefold process that you've
Shall we
got
talk
there.
about the failed theme first?
Yes, why not? Yes. The first theme we had was one of Tony's, and it was Hunter's Pie. The idea of the theme was that the first part of the game where you move a guy, he was
A shaman.
shaman. That's right. And you move him round, and the shaman mystically says how the hunter in the woods, which is the second part of the game, which is a 4x4 grid, he says where the hunter is going to move through the wood, and that hunter lands on a square with a creature on it, an animal on it, and that's
numbers.
and numbers, yes, and that the number of those animals, 1 or 3.
Oh yes, because now
usually.
It's just the number of animals. It's no
Yeah,
longer
that's right.
number and thing separated. It's just the number of animals determines how far it moves, and it's whether the animal correlates that determines whether that thing's eaten or not.
The hunter lands on a space which is 1 of 3 animals. That 1 or 3 is the number of spaces that the cook moves on the final circle, where the 4 animal types exist. So you move it around on that circle, and where the cook lands, that tile, if that tile's animal matches the animal on the hunter's space, then that animal on the cook's tile is removed. And basically, you are trying to.
That there's a tiny bit of uncertainty that you are one of 2 animals and your opponent is one of 2 animals. So you don't know, like you might be the partridge or the rabbit, I might be the goose or the deer. These aren't necessarily the animals, but you get the point. And
right.
the other thing I will say is around this time, so this was maybe 2017 or ish, I had introduced the cards and I'd done a little bit of testing. I was, you know what? We could have cards, and you just have a small number of cards that you can use during the game. And these cards, because you've got maybe 3 out of 9, and you've got 3, and you can say, okay, I've got these 3. There are 6 remaining. Even if you know those cards perfectly, you're not sure which ones your opponent has. So that's had, again, a little bit of uncertainty. It's not a massive possibility space, so you could still map it out, and I'm sure it would be not trivial, but simple-ish to make a robot to play this, really, really well and beat all the humans. But because, robots are pretty smart, so let's be honest. But yeah, it adds a little bit of excitement, saying, I get to do this. And then it was during the evolution of Hunter's Pie that Tony said, okay, rather than using free cards for each game, how about you get free cards for best of 3 games? And I think this was a really interesting choice, because then it's like, well, if I'm about to lose a game, do I play a card to avoid losing it? Or how likely does it need to be for me to win this game in order for me spending this card to have been useful? Otherwise, there's no decision. You just spend all your cards every single game. So this actually adds a little bit of resource management, I guess.
Yeah. So you're playing best of 3. Mm-hmm. So the card choices are interesting, because it feels like you probably would use a card in order to win, probably. But the thing is, that means that you've used one of your cards up, and your opponent has then got 3.
Mm.
you've only got 2 because you don't get any more cards. That's it, and you don't know what
And
3
it's
cards
never
your
as
opponent.
simple as that. It's never.
No,
It's almost never, okay, if I don't play this card, I lose. If I play this card, I win. If it was actually
no,
that binary, then I would always play the
it's
card.
not.
But
It's
it's
not. But
kind
no,
of,
it isn't.
okay, I'm more likely to win if I play this card, but also I don't know what my opponent has, and I don't know, can't plan exactly what they're going to do next turn and the turn
The
after.
timing of the card play is interesting because you're in the situation in the circle, in what we've now called the Circle of Doom. In the Circle of Doom, you have 3 of each of your 2 potential animal types.
I just very briefly say, we went through this whole
Yes,
evolution of humankind, where it was the
yes,
different types of humans battling against each other.
that's right. We had
tried,
different themes.
making it so that we were collecting rather than getting
Mm.
rid of the opponents, but that didn't quite work. And I'm going. If you want to say the name of the game, then I will flash it on the screen.
I've got it on my Word document. The current name of the game is The Last Bug Standing in the Circle of Doom. There we go. That is our current new title. It's a homage to Bez's longer titles, but not quite as long as Yo Dog, which was the Yo Dog. I hear you want to move a gnome, to move a gnome, to move a gnome, to maybe remove a tile. Can we show the little paragraph of what we've got? Here we are. Oh, you can just about see. Yeah. So basically, in a futuristic arena on a planet far, far away, can your crew knock out enough weird creatures to have the last bug standing in the Circle of Doom? So a game in which your navigator, capital N, tries to direct your driver's weaving moves through an alien landscape whilst your gunner shoots at bug-eyed monsters. If you plot the right course, make the right moves, and pick the right shots, you will have the last bug standing in the Circle of Doom. That explains effectively what you're doing. So the first piece you move is the navigator. In fact, it probably ought to be a game which the navigator, probably, rather than yours, because it's not yours.
Yes, I don't feel like you should possess these things. They're kind of the
no,
human.
you don't. No, don't.
They're the evil humans who've come to, destroy these poor bugs.
Yeah. So the navigator is the first guy, or lass, who knows? And then the driver is the one who moves through this weird alien landscape of 4x4 tiles, and then the gunner is the one who shoots the bug-eyed monsters. And we have 4 distinctive bug-eyed monsters that you are potentially eliminating, killing, and you win if you have the last bug standing. Sorry?
It's very 80s pulpy, kind of.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's a kind of Mad Max Starship Troopers pulp movie type of approach that we've taken. At the moment, it's not quite right, but I'm thinking that the bug-eyed monster you choose is your kind of mascot, and mascot may not be quite the right word. It's the one that's the one that you want to survive is the one that you're picking. And that's the thing we've got, and we have an artist working on the artwork for that. Now, the cards are as we said, there's 3 from 10 or 11. We've got 1 card which would probably be a card you wouldn't use in your first game, but you might use it in the other games. So you're perming 3 from 10 or 11 cards. So there's quite a lot of variety of cards you might get. And the card choices, I'm not particularly good at playing this game. I tend to commit the cards too early. You're always having to decide if you're about to lose the first one of the 3 tiles that are actually your tiles. Do you commit a card to that, or do you think, well, it's only 1, and then I've still got 2 left, and then if it's the second one, do I commit, or do I commit one of the cards to bluff my opponent into thinking that I'm actually the other type? So there's quite a lot of decision points there about when to use the cards.
There's definitely little bits of mind games, and there's a bit of holding your grit. I mean, It feels like you're letting your emotions run away with you.
So yeah, so that's where we are. And my objective with this is to kickstart this game early next year, whatever early next year this means.
Quarter
But
one, quarter two.
quarter one, quarter two. Well, I'm hoping I'm thinking quarter one probably. My problem as a publisher here is that we are also intending to publish another small game, one of our Pocket Campaigns games, the Three Sanchos, which I mentioned before, next year as well. So it's a question of coordinating Kickstarters. They're very, I mean, I think they're very different audiences, to
Would
be
you be
honest.
trying to print them at the same time for simplicity, or would Free Sanchos come out and then Last Bug Standing in the Circle of Doom afterwards?
I'm still thinking about that, actually. Because Three Sanchos is co-published with Frosted Games and Two Tomatoes, it'll be a bigger run, and it might even theoretically be a different publisher, a different manufacturer. So I don't know if it happens to coordinate. I quite like the idea that it could coordinate, and that we might make a bit of saving on cost if we do them together. That would be really, really good. But I'm not quite sure whether that will be possible. So I'm still umming and ahhing about it. It would be nice. It would be quite nice if we could get the whole lot.
So it will. So currently, it has been a while, and I said some things to Alan to kind of say, well, if it's not out by Spiel next year, I will have to kind of officially say I'll look at exploring other options, because I am at the point where I think I want to start having different styles of game. And I think that people who know me for party games, or people who know me for dexterity or speed games, might be surprised by this, because this is not a party or a speed or dexterity game by any means. This is a two-player strategic, thoughtful game. There is a tiny bit of randomness, but I would say far less randomness in most American games, I would say. Like just those 3 cards, and there's a hidden information in the choice of which 2 creatures you're going to go as. But beyond that, and I guess the initial
layout of tiles. But I think we're being quite ruthless about how we manage the random. So, for example, over the 3 games, you don't change the 4x4 layout. When you as you play the game, if a tile doesn't match with a creature, you flip it over, and on the back of each landscape tile, it's a wild card which matches anything. So if you land on that again, it automatically matches with the creature. So that this does push the game on quite nicely.
And it means that the game is mathematically going to finish.
Yes, that's right. But when you finish one game, you just flip those tiles over. You don't redeal the 4x4. So each set of games you are working with one landscape. So at least you know and can take advantage or not. You can understand that particular landscape as it's dealt, and that particular set of cards that you've got. So each game will have a different tactical and strategic kind of flavor to it, which is important. And that's it's not. I think it's quite that those aspects are quite critical to how the game feels. So it would be very different if you just read out the cards between each one, or if you read out the landscape
in there that you need some time to kind of explore this thing. And even playing 3 rounds, it is still just like a 30-minute game. It's not super long. And I think that also it depends how quickly you play. I mean, when I say 30 minutes, some folk will take 20 minutes, some folk will take 40 minutes. I don't know.
But if some player has a much greater understanding of that particular landscape and looks like they're going to overwhelm the other player, it's a short enough game that won't matter. and the way we organise.
Emotionally, one thing that we might have to think about is whether there should be rules of who gets what. Maybe something as strong as the less experienced player chooses which side they are after the landscape's been dealt. Maybe, yeah.
Something like that. Yes.
Because I know
still have
that
to think
there
about that
was
a
a
little.
concern from Charlie that it felt unfair, and I'm not sure that any landscape is actually mathematically unfair, but even if it feels unfair, that's a problem. So I think that if you just say the less, I mean, yeah.
So we could say the less experienced player chooses the start. These are things we can talk about
Like there's very
as
fine
we
tuning
with the development. Yeah.
But ultimately,
I don't actually think that's a particular problem.
I think that we've introduced this enough. We've been talking for over an hour at this point.
Yep.
And I did want to also briefly mention my own Kickstarter, which is finishing in just over 24 hours. According to the Kickstarter here, it's 32 hours to go. So
we're looking forward to that very much.
Excellent. I'm hoping to be able to I'm hoping. So what it might, I was secretly hoping to get everything done like this month, but I left myself enough time. I think I put like February. Oh wow, April. Oh my god, no.
You left yourself lots of time.
February. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, February. Yeah, I've given myself a good amount of time. It's not going to be all done this month, as I was secretly hoping. The art for these games has basically been done and is ready to print because I've managed to get that sorted, but it's going to be printed at the same time as Categorical and also a game about selecting 7 cards speedily, searching for synergies. And it's kind of getting all of these things together.
Yeah. How are you printing, Bez?
Through Rob Butler. I'm printing still print on demand. I am printing 1,000 copies total, but I'm going to be printing maybe 200-ish of each of these games. There's not going to be a large amount left. I'm going to be printing no more than 100 more than what the Kickstarter needs. And if I sell out, I should probably say once I sell out, then I will kind of think about what I do next. I mean, this feels like a good way to go forwards for me, where I can say, yes, once I've done Categorical and got that out there and given it to all my Kickstarter backers and are all happy with what it is, then at that point, I will maybe do a Kickstarter for Couple and also the original L deck and potentially do other things. And that will allow me to reprint multiple other things at the same time, because as I've kept saying, I don't have the audience myself as a very small scale publisher to sell thousands of games necessarily, but what I do have the audience for is to sell hundreds of games of each kind. And if I've got quite a few different games, which I currently do, then it makes sense to print 200 of this, 200 of this, maybe even 100 of this, just to top myself up. And then as long as that order comes up to 1,000, then that's not too many to sort out. And so I think this is basically my new system of doing things. Print 50 copies in a bag, see how it does. And then once I'm like, yeah, I'm really happy with this and there's no more changes that I feel like I need to make, then at that point, like, no more changes that I will ever want to make, but no more changes that I feel I need to make right now, then I will put it in a talk box. That's my plan.
Good plan.
Do you have any questions about this Kickstarter? I would like you to ask me a question if you have one, but or if anyone else has a question about what games are there. A game about drawing creatures, complemented the drawings and complemented the complements, which is about feeling good. A game about counting cat shapes and colors that keeps getting trickier, which you played on the Ferry, Alan. And I'm very proud of how it balances itself out for everyone, similar to Wibble. We've got a game about quickly matching words to pictures, but never words to words or pictures to pictures, which I'm proud of because it's super intuitive, and people get stuck into it just after watching a couple of games. Well, when I say a couple of games, I mean like once you've seen a couple of seconds, sometimes they're like, oh, that's how it works.
Yes.
And
yes.
after 10 seconds of a 2-minute game, they can literally just jump in. And it's like, oh, there's the word star, there's the stars. Okay. And if you've read the name of the game, you know the rest of the rules. You know exactly what you have to do. And a game about cute comical creatures and trying to identify the monsters who makes noises, which is an upgrade, in my opinion, to a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify the monsters who makes noises. Because whilst the only downside is there is no black and white version, so you can't color them in, but I thought a lot more about the emotions, about the mouths, about the types of mouths, about the numbers of mouths, and the things that are actually making the noises. And so hopefully this will be a lot more conducive to making diverse noises. And I've heard from Phil Viscaro that the success rate is about 70% for first timers. So they've been demoing it to lots of French people. So first timers are able to get other people to get the majority of other people to guess the correct creature 70% of the time. And I do think that if you get better at it, you'll be able to do it even more. And if you want to make it harder, that's when you use the cards numbers 6 and 7, which of course you need to use 2 hands for at that point. But do you have any questions?
Not really, unfortunately. We've ordered.
That's
I think Charlie backed for us for various reasons, and I think we've backed for two lots of the whole thing. Actually, I hope that doesn't cause you any problems with shipping.
No, not at all. It's an absolute delight and honor, and yeah, they will be. Yeah, I mean UK. I'll decide closer to the time.
How do you ship? How do you ship to the States?
Royal Mail, large letter.
Right. Okay.
It's very distinctly a large letter. So that's obviously the problem with this, because this is not a large letter, whereas 3 millimeters less than it would be. And that is one of the advantages of having something that's designed to be a large letter.
It's yes. I mean, I came up with a problem with supplying spare dice to people for Ming Voyages. We had a few dice which weren't printed on one of the faces, which is annoying, really annoying. But so supplying dice, they unfortunately don't go as letter. They have to go as large letter because it's just too thick. Because because it's 12 mil, even the 12 mil dice is too thick for an ordinary letter size. So it has to go large letter, which is really annoying.
And I mean, obviously,
even though it's a tiny little thing.
Letter to large letter, but then once you're large letter, then you can actually. I could put in. I think I might be able to get in 6 games into one envelope, if I'm careful with how I pack it. And manage to still get it. But 4, I can definitely get in. 4 is just okay. I know it's definitely not going to shift around. That's why I wanted 4 as the target number for people to buy. And if people are...
How about Europe? How's your EU?
Again, it's all done through Royal Mail. I'm going to do it click and collect.
Oh, right.
And so you save like 10% of the cost by doing it through the internet and then printing it out yourself. But beyond that, it's pretty much the same as just taking it to the post office, except that I've already printed the thing onto it, and they will be posted as usual with love, by which I mean that they will all be personalized. But I think that I am going to go into talks with Spiral Galaxy very soon, because maybe not my next Kickstarter, maybe not my next Kickstarter, but at some point within the next year, I won't be able to ship things at all. And at that point, I'll have to A, pay someone else to do it and possibly charge more than I've been doing. And B, I will obviously not be able to personalize all the letters. And I won't be able to have a little comic with it. So I will warn people, because people who are used to my level of personalization will be slightly disappointed, I'm sure. But yeah, maybe
Well,
in.
sometimes, scale. You're selling more games, which is always good. Yeah, so
I
we
hope
work with Spiral
it's
Galaxy.
not necessarily I'll be selling more. It's more that they will be
It
able
takes
to
too
keep
much.
doing it whilst I'm not physically here.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
trying to work out things in a way that I don't need to be physically here for,
Yeah.
because yeah, whilst I'm happy, whilst I'm willing to pack a few hundred things and print out stuff, and I do much prefer it when if I've managed to rope in a friend or two to help me along the way. It is going to be kind of nice to not have to worry about that as well, because
Yes, I found that because we used to dispatch all our individual copies that we sold, but now I use Spiral Galaxy for that because I figured, well, we're retired, we don't have to do individual packing of boxes and things anymore. We can get somebody else get them. But you are
totally
paying. I
reasonable.
mean, you are paying for them to do it. But even so, I think they are specialists in that, which is good. Great.
And my gosh, why aren't, for some reason my comments aren't highlighting these days. And I'm sorry to say it's that, I missed again so many comments from like hours ago who almost like 50 minutes ago just wanted to say, about wood, what's it called?
Woodcraft.
Woodcraft, yeah, there are
Yeah.
some types of trees you can reroute, surely.
Yes, yes. But I don't think you cut up a plank and reroute that. This is the conceit of Woodcraft.
And apparently, is this actually true? Have you actually played the whole game of Tranquility with Elaine? That is actually super lovely to hear. But at this point, I'm going, Alan, ask everyone in the comments a question of the day.
A question
of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. Question of the day.
Right. My question of the day is, what is your favourite title for a board game and why?
Oh,
Favourite title? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say the longest name ever because that hasn't quite been finished. So, once it's been printed, then the title will be officially finished. I mean, if I count my own titles, the title that I'm most fond of is a game about quickly matching words to pictures, but never words to words or pictures to pictures, because you get to kind of waggle your finger while you say it.
Yeah,
And
that's part of the title. It's part of the title.
Other than that, I do like the title ... and then we held hands. I think that's a lovely title. I will say that having played the game a few times, I think that it's more abstract and it has less feeling of a relationship than some people say, but it is a very pleasant game, and I can definitely see how it kind of alludes to that. And it's kind of more, hey, this is what we're going for, and it sets the scene, and it makes sure that if you're playing that game, if you're receptive to this theme, then maybe you're more likely to see it within the game. And so I do enjoy that. How about you, Alan? How about everyone else watching? What's your favourite title?
Yes, what's your favourite title? I mean, I know I shouldn't say one of mine, but one of
say
the
one
ones.
Of yours and one of someone else's. That's how I keep it fair.
Yeah, my favourite game is a game which it was one of my prototypes. It's called Snack Attack. Snack Attack is a game about alien invasions through fast food chains. So Snack Attack, I thought, was just spot on for that. But yeah, so that's still tucked away in one of the drawers in my filing cabinet, I think. It was a game I started designing it probably 15 years ago and put it away because it broke at one point and I got discouraged and I just put it away. But I think it was one that could be resurrected. So I like that. Yes, I do like that one. I quite like, well, in the sense of war games, I like the whole No Retreat series of war games, which is
it has
they're
an
all called.
isn't it?
Yeah, exclamation
No
mark, no
retreat.
retreat, exclamation. They're all called no retreat. But of course, they're all about all of those games are about managing the retreats that you have to do. You can if you actually do the no retreat on any of those games, you just get destroyed. So I think it's quite a nice game, especially as the first one was a no retreat Russian front, and the whole of that game starts. The whole of the game is because it's 1941. It starts with the Russians having to retreat back in front of the Germans, and then if the Germans don't get automatic victory, and it's very unlikely they will, then it's all about the Germans having to retreat as well. So both sides have to not do no retreating. So it's quite fun. Yeah.
So it's kind of like an aspirational thing that you'll never actually quite manage.
It's basically all of those games are about both sides managing how they have to retreat. No, you have to retreat in both games.
Yeah. Okay, so it's very ironic, those titles.
Yeah, it's very ironic, and there's a whole then expanded to a whole sequence of games where it's all about all the different fronts. Like France 1940 is called No Retreat France 1940, and you think, yeah, the French didn't work out how to not retreat either, did they?
Point. Over to you. What are you up to? You can share what's if you want to. Is there anything you want to share? Something that you're looking forward to? Something that you have to do? I am. Yeah, I try to take at least every second Wednesday off just for myself. Not about playing board games, just about heading out. And 2 Wednesdays ago, like I said, I would take the day off, and then it wasn't until I think 7 o'clock that I actually got outside, which is a bit late. Like, I mean, today I'm going to just say, you know what, I do have work that I would like to do. I mean, sure, there's a lot that I could do, but it's not essential, it's not vital, and I think it's important to take care of the self. And so for that reason, I'm going to sort myself out, get showered, try to spend no more than like 1 more hour on like computer or anything today, until I've gotten out and I've spent the entire day, like until it's dark. I will just try to get outside, cycle, and maybe just sit somewhere, potentially sit in a pub, I don't know, but I'll try and spend the day not playing games, not working, out of the house. That's my plan.
That sounds like a really good idea. Unfortunately, I won't be doing that. I'm looking forward to a couple of things. I'm actually chatting to Spiral Galaxy about maybe using Amazon for some of our fulfillment. I honestly don't know whether that's going to be possible or not, but I'm chatting to them about it. So that's fun. I'm going to a seminar, going virtually to a seminar tomorrow evening, run by University of Edinburgh history of games people, called Playing D&D in Historical Settings. Ooh. I thought that might be quite interesting. And they've got various people who actually do run D&D campaigns in historical settings. So I thought I'd see how that works out. I'm interested in historical gaming. So, but
you are specifically a keen historian.
I am a keen amateur historian, but I hadn't actually looked at playing D&D itself in historical settings. That's quite an interesting idea. So that's that one.
Could you see yourself being a actual historian of going off and doing first-hand research and
I was invited to do a PhD a couple of years ago by somebody, which would actually have been a PhD on historical wargaming, professional historical wargaming. But the trouble is, I don't think that would match with actually doing anything else. Because I think it's a big commitment to do a PhD.
Yeah,
basically means you've got 3 or 4 years of that's your whole life.
Board games are your first love at this point.
Yes. I mean, even though that would have been designing that would have been designing games. It would have still been in the gaming, professional gaming, wargaming. I figured that actually I would have had to have ditched surprise day games in order to do it.
You enjoy
Because really,
making games
I
for
enjoy
people who are
making.
not necessarily soldiers or whatever.
Yes. It would have been a big commitment in terms of time and money. And although, yes, I have for the whole of my life been attracted to the idea of doing some research, proper academic research. But I've never really had enough push of myself to actually go and do it. So I decided to stick with what I know, perhaps a bit more. So,
Well, at this point, I'd like to recap and wrap up before we finish up. So to recap and wrap up, I talked about one thing I didn't mention was the crows, but it was a lovely day wandering off and seeing these two majestic crows.
Oh, right. Lovely.
And then, one of them decided to fly away. And then, yeah, I don't know if this is because they were scared of me or because they didn't want to be near the first crow. I don't know what's going on there. The other thing, yes, we talked a little bit about Lunar Base, which we've both played. A lovely resource system. There's, the closest, the only game I've made where there's a bunch of varied cards, unique cards in Lost Bog Standing in the Circle of Doom. That's a very small pack. And a game about selecting 7 cards, speedily searching for synergies. That was really fun to make. I'd really love to have a aspiration. I don't know if other people would like to see this of me, of actually making a deck construction game where what my design goal, I just want to put this out there, even though it's not a recap wrap up, is that it costs £10 to £15 to get a deck and join in a pre-release, and it costs at most £40 for like the most expensive deck possible. So if you're like, oh, I want that card, like basically things are going to be reprinted. This is very deliberately not a game for collectors. It's like to heck with collectors. I don't care about them. Let's just make decks that people can hopefully buy, non-randomized, a whole bunch of cards, and then everyone makes a bunch of decks out of this one thing, and then maybe, a few months later there's a similar sort of cycle. That was an idea.
That's quite inventive. That is quite inventive.
It really enjoyed Tranquility. I felt like it is a really benign and relaxing game potentially, and if you want to make it easier, then obviously don't need to add in all this stuff. Reiner Knizia's Through the Desert, which has so many things to think about, and Tom Cauldron said it's got them to think about all the possibilities within gaming. And I think that this is a game that does definitely still hold up today. We talked about Last Bug Standing in the Circle of Doom, which we talked about the show that Alan Paull's done. We talked about Woodcraft. We talked about, just how the redesign contest came to be from having these extra games, and then I didn't quite make it. But like the whole design process, I didn't talk about my relationship with the redesign contest, and I would be interested to talk about your relationship with that, and maybe even have Michael on. That would be a nice stream.
That would be good. We should do that.
Yes. I don't know if Cara would be willing to talk. I mean, Cara's quite busy generally and doesn't. But I mean, Michael streams quite often.
Yeah.
So yes. But the actual story of the game, going through different ideas until it's settled on this kind of pulpy, okay, this is a steering wheel, and this is the alien landscape, and then this is the place where those bugs are in the Circle of Doom. That last one is the Circle of Doom. That's the titular eponymous single of Doom. So that finishes the recap and wrap up. Is there anything that I missed, Alan?
Nope, I think we're there. I do
Okay,
think
if you
we're
want
there.
to check me out,
Excellent.
I am Stuff by Bez everywhere. And please, definitely, if you've not already, do check out. Wow, something is seriously wrong with the comments. Yes, I think something's going wrong with StreamYard. Check me out and check Alan out here. And Elaine says, yes, Elaine and Xate did indeed play Tranquility with Sea Monsters. Xate was very patient, and now next game will be better.
Good.
That sounds lovely, and
That's
I'm
all great.
very happy to have played a small part in bringing people together. And yeah, I don't know why the comments are messing up.
I can see them. I can see them. Is that?
Yeah, but I get a little alert whenever there's a new comment. But it wasn't turning red to say there's been a new comment. So yeah, I can see them if I scroll down, but only when I actively scroll down.
Right.
It doesn't pop up automatically, which is what it normally does for me. But yes, if you want to check Alan out, then of course check out Surprise and all those things.
Yep. If you want to get me, if you want to actually get me, best on email. But
share, spread the word. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Xate. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Most importantly, thank you to Alan Paull. Hey.
Well, thank you, Bears. Thanks for having me again.
And I think that in 2 weeks' time, we will probably continue our discussion. We'll do a broad overview of auctions, continuing through Board Game Geek thing, before we go into the subcategories of auctions. For now, the only thing left to say is, of course, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Do. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, everyone. Bye, Alan.
Bye, Bears.